Now you can start it, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, we have a quorum. Kathy, would you please take a roll so make sure we have a quorum?
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Chuck Cornforth.
Aye.
Damon Green,
Aye.
Don Kessinger. Aye. Mike Terry. Aye. Leonard Green.
All right, we have a quorum. Thank you very much. We'll get this meeting kicked off. Would you join me in saying the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, thank you. All right, welcome back to another wonderful Grandview C4 School Board meeting. With that, entertain a motion on the approval of the agenda.
Will we approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
Been properly moved and second that we approve the agenda as presented. Roll call, vote please.
Amy Blankenship,
Did we lose Amy? We may have lost Amy, I don't see her. Well, that pledge gets everybody.
Chuck Cornforth,
Aye.
Damon Green,
Aye.
Don Kessinger. Aye. Mike Terry.
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, and Amy just came back.
Sorry, and it's a, yeah.
Amy, how do you vote on the motion to approve the agenda?
Oh, aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up, Superintendent's report, Dr. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you. Can you click on that one more? Or is it under here? It's probably under here. Yes. Okay. So, want to do a couple quick things and give you as much information as humanly possible. So, number one, just a quick update on summer school, kind of letting everybody know what's going on. Obviously, we switched to a virtual summer school this year. We do have a couple students on site, but I just wanted to ask maybe Dr. King to kind of give a few details of what she's seen so far and kind of how that's gone.
No problem. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, so we actually have, I'm very proud, I'm going to say this without goosebumps. We've actually had more kids in credit recovery this summer and have passed than ever before, which we're very excited about. We have, so far, there's only 7 students at the high school that have dropped out. In previous there was over 23% of the students would drop out before they finished summer school, and only 7 children or students have dropped out. At that, we have over 300 kids enrolled in Odyssey Ware and Launch at the high school in 9th through 12. No one has dropped out of Launch. We have had kids, students right now have recovered over 63 students have recovered all their credits that they were missing as a result of not necessarily just COVID, but we're behind. So 63 students have already made up those credits. One student actually asked if he could come, he was liking it so much, could he come back and start his math so he could get his math credit for next year out of the way as well. We had to tell him that that's not the purpose of this, but we applauded his initiative for wanting to do that. We have kids in Launch taking dual credit classes. We have kids taking psychology, history of baseball class as an elective, plus we have health classes, PE classes going on, and a couple driver's ed are taken through the Launch program, which is the virtual platform out of Springfield, Missouri. We only have our elementary, we only have 1 section per grade level, but some of those sections are pretty large. And we can say that 100% of the kindergartners that started are going to complete. 99% of the first graders, 92% of second graders, 100% of third graders, 95 fourth, 90 fifth and sixth. And our middle school, which is typically where we have the most kids drop, 85% of those students will complete their work this summer. I have to praise the teachers. The teachers have worked super hard, making calls, getting them all to log in and keep going with it. So we're super proud of the fact that we're probably one of the best turnouts we've had for summer school, and it's been all virtual. Entertain any questions you might have.
What do you think the biggest difference in the completion rates, virtual versus in person, is?
Well, we're still going to try and figure out that exactly. Now, there's not as many students enrolled as we typically have, like in the elementary level. We typically have quite a few more. So we're thinking maybe the ones who did sign up are particularly motivated to stay in. Their parents are particularly motivated for them to stay in. But I really feel like our teachers have really just gone above and beyond just to make sure that contact stayed in. Their assignments were different. The teachers they worked 4 hours a day rather than their typical all day that they would have worked if they were teaching summer school. I think they're more energetic. I think they're ready. This was probably our test on a different platform that we were using as well, Seesaw, for our elementary as well. And they've really taken to it and found a lot of good things to do with it. So we were actually going to send a survey out and see, teachers, what do you think? What is the reason you think that kids stuck with us? When we knew that previously, during COVID-19 shutdown, we didn't have that percentage of students that stuck with it. These students though did. These are the ones that completed during COVID-19 as well.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is kind of in line with what the student asked about getting his math credit. It's kind of like a precursor of possibly putting together a program where if somebody really wants to move ahead or take more control of their education, they can take extra courses or something along those lines.
And that's what the launch is. We actually they're all. Credit recovery was different from credit acquisition. So we actually had a credit acquisition. He was just so much in credit recovery and he finished that. He wasn't going to have time to do actual acquisition on a class as well. But we told him that was going to be his option. And we've got 8th graders that there will be incoming freshmen that will already have their health credit completed before they ever get there. I think we've got about 65 kids that will, as a freshman, already coming in with a credit done, and they can move on. A lot of them want to take their PE and get a PE credit as well. So it was I don't know how much you guys, but we brought some into the high school. Dr. Rodriguez went to the health department and we kind of had a fight to bring some of those kiddos in because we knew they weren't successful during COVID. So we brought them in and were social distance. Angela Brantley worked and Ms. Cook worked to get a room set up so that we could use those rooms. And that's been just remarkable, the steady stream. And when they finish, they don't have to come back. It's like, so they're really motivated. As soon as they finish their work and it's a pass, they don't have to come back. So we're actually looking at other things like, instead of just seat time, how do we start measuring students' competency at whatever it is and not make them just continue the seat time if they don't need it? So this has kind of sparked a lot of how we do school and how we do high school in particular, how we can do it better to meet the needs of our students, because they've proven to us they're more than capable of doing the work. It wasn't that the work was too hard at all. It was what other instances that brought them to not pass those classes. They are able to do it. And I think one of them I asked on his way out the other day, I said, so what do you think of all this? And he said he finally believed in himself. And I thought that was telling that he had accomplished something and believed in himself. Now there's not going to be any stopping him.
That's awesome.
I'll add, it's always a contest as well, because we have to make everything a contest. So when I went up there, the teachers were still competing with each other and said, now how many students have you had complete yours? And then they're like, okay, yeah, I thought I still had at least 5 or 6 more. So no, I'll be ahead of you by the end of the week. So it was a fun competition in that regard to make sure that our kids were being successful. And it was really, really working out well. So I certainly commend Dr. King and her team and Stephanie Bradley kind of thrown a loop in terms of how to do virtual summer school and having kind of how to make this happen, but it certainly has been very successful thus far. So we're very, very pleased with that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Didn't do this first, but I want to do it right now. I want to be able to introduce one of our new administrators, Daniel Scher is on the line. I'll ask Dr. King, do you want to give a little intro here?
Sure, I sure do. So Daniel Scheer is joining us as our new coordinator of professional development. As you know, Ms. Bradley is going to be a building principal at Highgrove Early Childhood Center. I just want to tell a little bit about Daniel, and then I'm going to let you ask him some questions or let him tell you a little bit more of his information. But Daniel comes to us with a wide variety of experiences. He holds a bachelor's degree in speech communications, and then went back to school and got his bachelor's degree in elementary education. He has a master's degree in curriculum and instruction and an ed specialist degree in administration. He's worked in both independent school districts and Lee Summit districts. He's taught everything from third grade to high school English. So he's got a wide variety of teaching experiences as well. He's also taught at the undergraduate and graduate level at the Missouri University. He's been a mentor, an instructional coach, coordinator of MU Fellows Program, and an administrator. And he went back to the classroom after being an administrator because he missed the classroom so much. And his passion is working with new teachers and recruiting teachers and assisting teachers in their professional development. And we are super, super happy that he is willing to join our team and help take the CNI team to even further heights. So Mr. Scheer, if you want to unmute yourself there, say hi to the group, and they won't ask you too many hard questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you go.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you all. You know, it's been a long time. I haven't had a very traditional trajectory in my career. I've kind of hopped around and followed my heart. I'm a very heart-led person. And so kind of like what Dr. King said, I just finished 3 years in the classroom, mainly because when I was an administrator before, you know, technology has come a long way in my teaching career. And when I started, it really wasn't very prevalent. And so when I was evaluating teachers and participating in their professional development, I always felt kind of a lack of real true understanding just because I hadn't walked that walk. So that's kind of what Dr. King was referring to. So having 3 years in the classroom in a building that, and in a district that had a platform established and one-to-one technology really forces you to dig deep and learn quickly. And so kind of taking that experience led me again to kind of want to have a broader view. And I did lots of research, looked at lots of districts, and, you know, hearing, and I told Dr. King this, and I hadn't had the opportunity to tell Dr. Rodriguez, but a couple of weeks ago had the opportunity to hear them both speak. And, you know, by this point, I've already accepted the position, but it was very reassuring to hear someone like Dr. Rodriguez speaks with such passion and conviction, has such a belief in students. We share a real common philosophy of, he was talking about his glass half full philosophy. And I think at a time more than ever, I can't imagine a time where we need that positive view and seeing all of the possibilities as we move forward in such an uncertain time. And, you know, getting a chance to spend time with Dr. King and Elizabeth McCracken and the CNI team, and feeling very reassured that we speak a very similar language of the belief in a well-designed curriculum supported with professional development that is of high quality, is an absolute essential component to student achievement. And so, you know, getting a chance to come to Grandview, it feels very familiar. It feels like Independence. When I worked in Independence, I understand the challenges, I understand the work. I'd like to think of myself as a change agent and a leader, and always looking for the opportunity that gives me the chance to make the biggest impact on behalf of students and teachers and families. So super excited to come to Grandview. And again, I appreciate the time to meet you all this evening.
questions from the board?
No questions. Welcome aboard. No questions. Welcome.
This is Monica Terry. I always have questions. You'll learn that about me. So what are you most looking forward to in this new position?
Well, I think more than anything is getting to know people. And I think that it's you can look at programs and read documents and they're words on pages and names on papers, but an educational organization is made up of people. And if you don't know the people that you're working with and the people that you're trying to help support, it's impersonal. So I think more than anything is just that opportunity to start meeting people. I've had the opportunity to meet people at central office. And as we begin to come back, curriculum writing is coming up very soon. And so there will be lots of opportunities once I'm officially there full time to meet people. And so that's probably my number one goal at the moment.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
I have to let Monica go because if you get in her way, you might get in trouble. I have a question for her. Normally I'm pretty quiet, but I don't know, I'm feeling kind of froggy tonight, so I'm gonna ask a question.
Okay.
In light of all that's going on, I heard you mention being a change agent and looking for, the best solution and watching out for the kids. In light of everything that's going on, how do you see yourself playing a role in that, being a change agent?
I think one thing that's really important when you are in a position like the position that I've accepted is you really do have to have an understanding and a recent understanding of what it looks like to be a teacher today. And I have told my friends and my family alike that are both in education and not, that I don't think we've ever seen a time since the transition away from the one-room schoolhouse that we have had a more redefining moment in what education is and what it can be. And so I think for me, having literally just walked out of my classroom weeks ago, saying goodbye to those students and that experience, if you've never walked that experience, it's hard to really understand. And so I feel like I can absolutely put myself in the role of a teacher because I've lived it. I know how hard it was. I know when I left on March 13th for spring break, that by the time I was ready to come back, there was nothing to come back to. And we were completely virtual, and that was just our new reality. And so, you look at a profession of people that everyone here tonight is in a support role for teachers, and we are all in a support role for students. And so I think someone in my position with that recent experience of such a unique, unpredictable time has a good perspective, can relate in a way that you might not be able to if you've never taught virtually. It's hard to really understand what that looks and feels like.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for Daniel? Daniel, again, very happy to have you on board. Very excited to have more conversations with you, and certainly appreciate your leadership, and welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity again. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
And
All right,
Kenny,
moving on.
before you
Yes,
go
sir.
to the next one, I'm gonna ask whoever phone that is, can you mute it or something, please? Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so moving on to a little bit about graduation. Obviously, we've had a lot of conversations about this and things that we've changed. Even since the last meeting, I know I've tried to provide you updates. You've seen maybe some things around from other school districts. I think it was announced Tuesday that Independence is going to go actually over on the Kansas side. Again, that's more about the Jackson County guidance and how restrictive that it's been. So still very happy with the plan that we have in place, and many other details coming out, but certainly a partnership that we're having right now in conversations with the city and the police being involved and assisting us and making sure that we can make this event as positive as possible. We're going to have several stages at the high school, giving them at least a one-on-one opportunity to walk across the stage, and that being done that way, we'll have We've done some video pieces that we'll compile for all of our graduates, and we'll post that. So the speeches by the students, as well as my speech and Dr. Price's speech. We'll have several things that we'll do, but certainly have everything roped up at the high school. Board will have certainly a role. We'll make sure that that everything's communicated to you as well. But more importantly, just trying to make sure that our parents and our families, and most importantly, our students, have an opportunity to just really celebrate this this event. Obviously, we did a lot of things leading up to this, but this is still the most important thing. So we'll do whatever we can do to make that as positive as possible for them. And knowing in light of the situation, this is not where anybody really wanted to be in that particular regard. Centralized enrollments, this certainly is going to be a little bit different. We're kind of rebranding it, and we posted that we're not doing our centralized enrollment the way we have been doing it. Everything's going to go virtual. So when we started this several years ago, it was actually after my first year, I believe, starting this process of what just online registration looked like and trying to build toward that. My predecessor put some things in place in order for us to be where we are now. It was always our intent to go virtual with this. It just kind of, in light of everything, kind of forced us to do it maybe a year or two earlier than where we were going. But hey, we're going to do it. It's going to be great. So certainly Ms. Cordier has been putting all those plans in place, and we've already been putting out information, making sure that everybody understood. Oddly enough, no one has complained that they don't have to wait in line. So I'm waiting for that complaint to come through, but so far everyone's been pretty happy about that. So Ms. Deanne, if you want to add anything there, I kind of went through that really quickly.
I think you covered it. We have dates coming up. We still have on-site online help for families that need tech support and need to sign up. That is by appointment only, so that we can guarantee safe and sanitary conditions. And UPS is still partnering with our families to upload documents. So upward and onward, we're moving forward to complete online registration a year before we wanted to, or at least a year before we targeted, but COVID gave us an opportunity here to move forward, and we realized there's going to be a few bumps here and there as we're a year ahead of time, but we're going to take it as it comes and try to support families as we can.
Along with all of that, kind of leading into the next point of just overall about COVID-19, and I kind of just kept this as a standing one. Yes.
Before you go on, can I ask a question about the online enrollment? What do you guys think is going to be the biggest challenge for the online enrollment? And how are you going to overcome that?
Ms. Cook, you want to take that one, since it's probably going to be maybe some of the requirements, the special circumstances is what I was going to go to, that your office kind of has to deal with.
Yeah, we'll continue to have stop points, just as we did in person, and certainly residency will be one of them, and that'll be one of the first ones that they have to encounter. So, you know, with FastPass, we've done a lot of, we've been doing that online as it is. We'll be doing a lot more with the affidavits this year. We are looking at relaxing things a little bit, still doing what we need to demonstrate folks live here, but whereas, as an example, in the past, if you lived in an apartment complex that you only paid one utility, you would have to do an affidavit. Not a big deal, but you would have to do an affidavit. If it's in a complex we know in your lease space that you only have one utility, we now will accept that plus one official piece of business mail as a standard residency instead of having to do that affidavit. So we are altering things a little bit to try to streamline that so that we don't have snags, particularly like the residency, which is a stopping point for people. So I think that will be one challenge, but I think they've been working on that. And actually, Mrs. Spencer, over the years with FastPass, the people that have been doing affidavits regularly, through appointments, she would work with them to get them done ahead of time. So we kind of had a little bit of a taste of that in the past, but we'll be full blown this year. Ms. Deanna may have more to add, but that's from my part of the world, that's what I see as one of the biggest challenges, potentially.
I think
Maybe.
Angela may have a different answer, and I think there's always different challenges with technology, and certainly we still have some families at last kind of count, 15, 20% sometimes that don't have access to internet. And so, certainly Angela's been great about, we're going to set up these times still to kind of come in, social distance, as was mentioned, and still use computers and on-site kind of thing. So certainly the team is fantastic. They've been doing this for several years. And so this was just, something will happen that we're not necessarily prepared for. And, it's happened every year, but we've gotten better at rolling with that. And again, that team is fantastic. They've really done a good job of making it better every single year.
If I may, I would add that another challenge we're not sure about are immunizations, given the state of medical facilities right now. So we're trying to do what we can to support that system by having an immunization clinic on site that again is by appointment. But that's kind of an unknown right now in that regard.
Again, kind of going into maybe a further explanation of just any other COVID-19, I'm just going to kind of keep this on here moving forward for board meetings, and I think it kind of encapsulates a lot of different pieces. Obviously, I could put several of those other things that were all impacted by COVID-19 in terms of graduation and again, the virtual enrollment that we were just talking about in summer school. They were all related to that. Tonight, I'll just kind of give you a brief piece of. Part of this obviously is the start of school. So obviously not really a day goes by that I don't read something or ask for further discussions about what does the start of school look like. Now we're about 2 months out. I'm not sure that anybody still is more aware yet of what that really is going to look like. I can tell you what we're doing thus far. I have a working group that is our internal folks that we've compiled, and so certainly all of our directors and coordinators, certainly my cabinet, transportation, all of our areas coming together at once and all having this discussion. As part of what happens, and certainly in any organization, but we don't always know what each other is doing. And so then all of a sudden we have 3 people all working on the same thing, and I thought I was supposed to do that, you're doing that, and then it's actually the other person that's doing it at the same time. So just our first meeting and them all going through and having discussions on what they're working on already established that we had 2 or 3 people all working on similar things. So it was really good for us to start to establish those particular components. With that, I also had some conversations with parents. I put together some small groups in which I Zoomed with them and just got interactions with them of, what went well, what didn't go well with the end of the year, and then what are you thinking right now with the beginning of the school year. That was kind of an informal way to gauge some additional input. And the best part, I guess, what I would say is, for the most part, there was nothing that we didn't already know. It was just maybe the extent of some of those pieces and providing us information that really was going to help us. Monday afternoon, I think about 1:15, we sent out our full survey to all of our parents and staff. So that's gone out as well. I will tell you, in less than 24 hours, we had over 600 responses. As of earlier today, this morning when I checked, we were close to 1,000, about 950 between staff and parents. So we're definitely getting input. It's providing us a lot of information that we will use to then move forward. Our next meeting is going to be next week, and then there'll be a point in time where we're probably meeting every single week as we lead up to the start of school. Again, the thing that I would share with anybody, and I'll start sharing outwardly with parents and start doing another Facebook Live and some additional information, is just fluid is the word that we have to know. We know that this is going to go in a different direction, and it may be multiple directions. So maybe we start school on time and everything's able to go back, but I'm still going to have parents that are not comfortable sending their students back quite yet. So we have to educate them. We have to make sure that we have a platform that's able to do that. Let's say that there's a point in time that we all go virtual. Again, sometimes that's a little bit easier because then we're all in the same environment. But at any point in time, if someone tests positive, then they're going to be quarantined. Well, maybe they were around another group, so then I have a group of, say, 10 kids that I have to quarantine in this that group. We still have to be able to continue moving forward because maybe they're asymptomatic and they're not ill, but they still have to quarantine. So we need to have a platform that allows us to do some of those things, and it has to be better than what we did in the spring. So the charge with that, and certainly there's even an item on the agenda tonight in regards to giving you a piece of some of that information from Dr. King's standpoint. But certainly there's a lot more to it than just the academic side, with facilities, with transportation, with any number of different things. So It is a very large scope. I can tell you that it's very absorbing, it's very overwhelming, it's a lot to talk through, but our parents and everybody absolutely wants to know what's going to happen. So our goal is to continue to communicate with them, and as we get closer to middle to late July, that we are sharing, this is what's our plan, this is what's going on, and then we start getting some additional input on our plan. So I envision that we'll do another survey at some point in time as we get a little bit closer to school, but probably by the end of this week and the beginning of next week, this information that we're getting from this survey is going to be extremely valuable for us and help us as we plan moving forward. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions with that. I can tell you we don't know everything as of yet, but I'm happy to answer any questions based on what I know right now.
How close are you to having like a plan A, plan B, potentially plan C, like built out?
Built out is a different question than I think even your first one. I think we're close to understanding what we can do. We know what platforms work. Even some of the things that we're doing with summer school is a part of that too. So I think we already have an understanding of what we're going to do now. It's like, how do we do it on the scope of K-12? Because some of the input that we've heard from our parents is, I've got a kid or two kids at elementary, one at middle and one at high. I can't have 3 different platforms that I'm trying to log in and check on every single one. Even if we were able to do a K-5 and a 6-12, at least then that's only 2. But ultimately, our hope is that we could have a platform for K-12 and that's for everybody. Even within there, we could have some different components. So I would say that we're probably close to having that figured out, that it's going to be a matter of training, it's going to be a matter of rollout, how do we make sure that our parents understand. There's a lot of other components that kind of go along with that. With our schools, I mean, certainly how do you social distance in a school when you've got 1,150 kids at the high school? So it's looking at every space in the building, you know, do all PE classes start out going outside no matter what? There will be no inside PE classes. Do we utilize band differently? Do we split them out into smaller groups? Does choir start by singing outside at the beginning of the year? There's a lot of those type things. Certainly those classes are certainly the ones that I worry about maybe a little bit more. What does lunch look like? Does lunch just become a grab and go all the way around for breakfast and lunch? So I would say all those things are all on our list of, we need to make sure that we get a detailed list of each one of those. I'm not sure that today that we're really close to saying this is exactly what we're going to do with all those. But those are all the questions that we know that we have to answer and that we have to be prepared.
Yeah, because I can see where, you know, today, whatever the guidance is going to be different than in a week,
Yes, ma'am.
you know, maybe tomorrow. And so, you know, if today you make plan A and say, this is what we're going to do when we go back, and then a week before school starts, they say, nope.
Yep.
So we have plan B and plan C to.
So that's what I'm saying about being fluid is
Yeah.
our plan right now is to start school on August 20th. But we know that August 25th, we could be told, oh, by the way, you're not going to close school. So we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
So, you know, our teachers' reports and our staff reports the week before school starts. And this year, whether it be by happenstance or some, you know, miracle, we did set it up to where we have 3 professional development days before school starts. The first time ever in our history. So
You knew.
this is the most fantastic thing ever that this, and that's not enough, but at least that's going to help us provide our staff an opportunity to be trained and understand what that's going to look like. So when we get the call Sunday night at 7 o'clock that you're not going to open on Monday, we can then transition into this other piece of just all virtual or all online. So that's why we know that we need to be flexible, because it can happen any day along the way. So the longer that it doesn't happen, the more opportunity that we have to get better at it, so that when it does happen, we're ready for it this time as opposed to goals.
Well, I know MSBA put out, I'm going to put in air quotes, guidelines for reopening schools. And I had so many people contact me and say, what in the world? Because it was a little extreme, in my opinion, some of the things, like if you did every single thing they said. So how are you marrying what they're saying they think you should do with, you know, basically what Jackson County Health Department is saying versus what you feel in your heart? Like, how does that kind of all play together?
Well, the problem with MSBA's guidance, the way that it was rolled out, there's certainly some challenges with all those pieces. But I'll say this, it is guidance. It is also statewide guidance. So if I'm in Harrisonville, if I'm in the Boot Hill, that's gonna look very different for me than it's gonna be in Jackson County. So I'm not gonna say that it's not on our list. It is guidance that we include, but I am not going to that as my source of predominant guidance. We have a call about every other week with Jackson County. Frank White's office, Frank White's been very forthcoming with us. There is somebody with Jackson County Health on that call. And so we get to at least dialogue about what's happening, what's the trends, what do you see? Are we moving into phase 3? Oh, we're not going to move into phase 3 yet. Those kind of things. And so those conversations are going to be very helpful and probably more helpful than what MSBA's guidance is going to be right now. It's on the list, and it's one of those things where it's something that we haven't considered. But I'm not saying, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily what we're using as our top thing that we're going by. How's that?
I think there was a lot of panic when that came out, not gonna lie.
It also, to your point, it came out a little while ago.
Yeah.
And that guidance is different than the guidance today,
Today,
which
yeah.
will be different from the guidance next week and in a month from now.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
One question. You mentioned quarantine and how you might deal with that situation. You gave an example. What type of process do you think you're going to implement just for identification in this, the sense that someone might be sick?
Well, the guidance that we received from DESE and from the State Department of Health, this was about a week and a half ago. So certainly as we progress forward, we'll be having additional conversations. But everything around them was around the contact tracing, trying to make sure that you could somewhat identify, are they in a room, but because you guys had a mask on, you're okay in that particular regard. Our students are going to have masks, which students do, which students do not. And so it's really going to be about the contact tracing piece. Just because they were interacting with somebody doesn't necessarily mean that they should be quarantined. Now, again, we don't make that decision necessarily. We do that in conjunction with people who know a lot more than we do. So we contact health departments. So even in previous situations that we've had with staff members, we communicate with the health department and we give the guidance. This is what we know. Yes, that person should quarantine based upon our guidance. That person does not need to quarantine based on our guidance. So it's what we've heard thus far is it's all about contact tracing and making sure that we understand, okay, that person was in close contact with this classroom. Therefore, everybody in that classroom will need to quarantine or not quarantine. We will have to, I'm not saying it's an exact science today, but it's certainly, that's our initial guidance thus far.
So let me rephrase. So in the case of adults, adults can tell you that they're sick or give you some key that, hey, I possibly could be affected. But when it comes to elementary schools or middle schools where they may not even have the symptoms, is there any process to identify a sick student before it gets out of hand? You talked about anything like that?
Well, I think one of the things would be that we know that any of our guidance is going to have to include additional and a lot more interaction with our parents. And it's going to be our community and making sure that we're telling people, I understand that at times you would send your kid when that kid, well, you're fine, you need to go to school. This is not that time. Here's this list. If any of these symptoms are on, or you have your child or anybody in your home has any of these symptoms, your child does not need to come to school. You let us know. Again, we'll also have some opportunities for online learning in that regard because we know we have to be fluid. So it's not just going to be, it's not going to count against you necessarily attendance-wise. We've already talked with DESE about what that attendance requirement is going to look like, and it's going to be different this year. And so that's going to be helpful because that's one of the things that parents are going to be concerned about is, well, now my kid has to stay home for 2 weeks and now the kid's going to lose this or my attendance is going to hit. So we have to be flexible in that regard. Absolutely. I mean, so, we certainly want to make sure that that's the case. But even if they're not symptomatic, we have to look at some of those other particular pieces that they may have, or anybody in your home has these particular items might be one of the things that we need to make sure that we have issues with. In terms of staff, certainly part of our guidance more than likely is going to include every one of our staff members having a checklist every single day that they have to do. It could very easily also be that all of our staff members have to start the school year wearing masks, and that be a requirement. We've already ordered, and on the board agenda this evening under consent is items for every single one of our buildings, so our staff members can get the temperature check in every single day when they come in. They get that done, and they would have to check off that they do not have any of these particular symptoms on that particular day. So, as you said, staff is a little bit different in that particular regard. Even some of the high school kids, I do worry a little bit more about the elementary kids and middle school, that may not always be forthcoming with some of those particular challenges. So that's why we have to partner more, but there's got to be a lot more communication with our families and probably regular communication of, keep in mind, this is any of these particular symptoms. Do not send your child to school and inform us immediately if any of these arise or anybody in your household has any of these particular pieces. So those are the kind of things, and again, a lot of national guidance around that I think will help us also. But those are the kind of things that we're working on right now.
Okay, thank you. I think, like Monica said, I'm just, being that Martin City is in Kansas City, and I heard something on the news today that Kansas City is doing, maybe doing something different than Jackson County.
Yes, sir.
Is proposing, so we'll have, I'm sure you're watching that. And just to, like Monica said, the questions I hear from the community and folks are myriad of and change daily as well as the.
Yeah, on the survey as well.
I imagine your list is several pages long. And,
I wouldn't even say pages, I'd say a book.
And change daily, but yeah, they're all like a certain statements question. You know, are we gonna check the temperature of students in school every day as well as the teachers, or if the teachers, or would you check them as they get on the bus or before they even get to school? Many questions. Write a book.
The interesting thing, like you said, Kansas City versus Jackson County, Kansas City has its own health. So because of that, they can offer a different guidance than what Jackson County does. Typically, what I've seen thus far is Jackson County's guidance has been more restrictive. So we would always go with Jackson County because that's where most of ours. If Kansas City ended up being more restricted than what Jackson County was, we'd have to have that conversation about which guidance that we are following. So we'll keep that informed as well. But yeah, to your point, even about checking temperatures of students, health department even says that's not even one of the main symptoms for younger kids. So if you're only checking temperatures, that's really worthless. It's really not beneficial. It's all those other symptoms that we need to make sure that we list out. So yeah, we're going through a million different things.
Well, the bad part is school's gonna start and then you're running right into cold, flu, and strep season, which have a lot of similar symptoms. So now what do you do, you know?
We have a good time. That's what we're gonna do. Okay. Last thing that I'll share is just a brief thing and about Johnson Controls. This was on the board agenda a month or 2 months ago in regards to some different pieces that we're doing with that organization around efficiency of our networks in terms of HVAC and some of our power and things like that, lighting. So we'll be bringing that back and some additional pieces to you. That was definitely an effort to save some money on the bright end, certainly save and conserve energy, but also save some money that can then be put back into our bond funds and be able to use that maybe more extensively. So just wanted to provide a brief update. Those conversations continue. We'll be bringing something back, I think, in July in regards to that. And just giving you a little bit of a heads up there, and certainly be happy to answer any questions once we get to July and kind of read through that if there's additional questions around that. Anything you want to add to that, Ms. Cook?
No, I mean, only that we just want to kind of give you a heads up. When we brought this, when we brought the agreement with Johnson, we told you that any specific projects would come back to the board for approval. So that's what we're working with them to. We hope to bring specific projects to the board for approval in July.
Still having trouble hearing.
Mike's over there. If you talk into your hand, they won't hear you.
Sorry. So I'm so sorry. Just saying that, just wanted to remind you that we were working on that, and as when we initiated this project with them, we told the board that we would come back to the board with specific projects for approval. And so that's what we are hoping to bring, our goal is to bring that to the July board.
Thank you.
Speaking of bonds, has the current state of affairs affected bond projects? We talked about it the last couple meetings ago that were the summer bond projects, or are those all still on track and moving forward?
They are on track.
Hold on, wait a minute. Is that part? Not trying to cut you off by any means. Just want to make sure we're staying on track. Do we have, is that part of our, I think that was part of the report that's gonna be presented a little bit later with the budget?
Isn't that on the, no, was that last month?
No, I
It
didn't
was
see
last
it on
month.
here. I looked before I asked that question, Leonard.
It was last month, it was on the agenda, sir.
Sorry, all right.
I just want to make sure they're still moving forward with no issues given.
Yes, and just as to let you know that any contractor that's working on the projects reports to Mrs. Brantley's office in the morning for temperature checks, and that
Nice.
is recorded, and then they are told, I mean, they have to stay in specific areas of the building, and they are mandatory masks.
Last thing for me, sir, is just board priorities update. The main thing that I would probably bring your attention to, a number of different things going on. Certainly not all of them fit into these categories, but I would say just our continued commitment to cultural competency and what we're trying to accomplish, especially in light of what's going on in the world at the moment. But certainly, I released the statements, and I had that put in the Rodriguez report in the paper. And what I would say just to the board is I'm continually proud of the things that we're doing in our district. I'm excited now about starting the school year and being able to push what we've been trying to do forward, maybe even more than what we had. I keep trying to do a couple steps at a time. I'm really excited to be able to move this forward and really continue to progress with our students and additional staff members. But I'm very proud of what we've been doing as a district. And it has been noticed by other area districts where they have contacted even me about, hey, what are you doing around this? Because they have seen that we are definitely moving forward. We are not anywhere close where I want to be, but I am very, very proud of those particular pieces. But certainly, there's more things on there for anybody to discuss. But happy to move forward with that. But again, just something I'm very proud of right now. And actually, I think that's it for me.
Kenny, thank you for that. And I appreciate the segue because in light of all the things that have been going on, for us to be where we are and moving forward and doing the things that have been done, I appreciate your efforts in that because it's a hard conversation that needs to happen. So the fact that we're already there and beyond makes a huge, huge statement for us as a district and for us as a community. So thank you for that. Next up, salient dates. Man, we'll get done by midnight.
Yes, there are a couple dates on there to keep in mind, especially the board work session on July 25th. And obviously, like I said, right now, first day of school on the 24th.
All right, any questions on that, salient dates? Not, we'll keep it moving. Any written correspondence?
We have none this evening.
All right, thank you. Finance Committee report.
The Finance Committee met at 5:15 on June 23rd. In attendance were myself, Chuck Cornforth, Damon Green, and Don Kissinger, and Anne Marie Cook. There were no participants in the audience. Ms. Cook asked if there were any questions related to items on the June 25th regular open meeting. There were none. Inspection of warrants. The committee inspected representative warrants. Mr. Kissinger examined all warrants over 15,000. Mr. Cornforth examined district purchasing cards. Mr. Green examined the expense and reimbursement warrants. Based on the examination, the Finance Committee recommended the warrants be approved by the Board of Education. A miscellaneous item, Ms. Cook made a reminder that we will need a special warrant review on June 30th to close out the fiscal year.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Next up, recapitulation of funds.
Yeah, Ms. Cook?
Yes, the financials that you have are through the month of May. On the revenue side, we are down only about $600,000 from this time last year, which is a little surprising that we're that low. It's primarily were due to taxes paid, and then other state funding like transportation and food service. On our general taxes, general fund taxes, I believe at the end of May, we had received about a little over 93% of the amount, whereas last year we had collected 99.7% of that. As an update, in June, we did receive over $1 million in protested taxes. So we are now about 98% of our collection rate. So still not where we're still falling short a little bit, but certainly looking better than it did in May. On the expenditure side, we are up. Our payroll, that's the main thing we focus on because it is the majority of our budget. That is right on target with our cycle. So at the end of May, we did have a small surplus for the year. You will recall that expenditures will be elevated in June, but we do have some additional revenue in June, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the 3-year forecast and the budget.
Okay.
All right, I think that was the end of the report.
Sir.
Thank you. All right, next up, I don't believe there was any audience participation. Kathy, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. So entertain a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Amy Blankenship,
Yes.
Chuck Cornforth.
Aye.
Damon Green.
Aye.
Don Kessinger.
Aye.
Monica Terry.
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up on the actual action discussion agenda, student success focus area, program evaluations.
Yes, sir. With your permission, we do have a presentation this evening. So I would love to move that up if I can.
Yes. Let's make the switch, do what we need to do.
Fantastic. We'll do that right now. I'm going to turn this over to Cheryl Malloy, who's going to give us an update. Obviously, we're talking about cornerstones of care, so I won't steal all of her thunder, but as you know, we've got a very great partnership with them, and it's aligned with our board priorities, and certainly trying to make sure that we continue to do anything that we can to provide supports with our families, especially in this current climate and everything that's going on. So, let's go on.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Julie Plunkett. She is the clinical manager for school-based services for the Cornerstones of Care, and we have been working together for 2 years now. And Julie's going to give an overview of our this current year's assessments that we've done and the additional work that we've been doing at the middle school level. So I'm going to turn it over to Julie.
All right, so I understand there's some new people who to the board who may not be as familiar with this. So I'll go ahead and I'll start with just going a little bit over what the project is and what we do. And then we'll kind of look into some of the specifics about what has been happening. So we'll start on slide 6.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we come in and we conduct universal social emotional wellness screenings in the elementaries where we started with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. We do that because with the BASC system, you need to be 3rd grade to be able to take it on your own. Previous to that, then it would be teachers or parents who take it. So for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and then also now with our middle school, they are able to do that on their own. And we bring them into small groups and have them take those scores. We're looking at 3 areas within that: internalization risk, self-regulation, and personal adjustment. And we're going to see if any students are elevated in any of those areas. Internalizing is really when we're looking at things like students who don't let that symptoms out. They hold things in, they may not share a lot. We see some of the depression, anxiety, or some of those issues we see there. Self-regulation is some of those are the ones that acted out more. You see a lot of the more behavioral difficulties in that, the ones that traditionally get services because they make themselves known. A lot of things like, you know, your impulsivity, attention, a lot of stuff falls under that. The personal adjustment are those who are having difficulty with relationships and self-esteem really fall into that. They're scored normal, elevated, or extremely elevated, and we really focus on those who are elevated or extremely elevated in any area. This is a screening and not a full assessment, so we're just trying to get a snapshot of students who might be at risk, who might need some extra assistance, who we might not catch otherwise because maybe they're not acting out in traditional ways. But we're not doing a full assessment of them. So what we've done in the past, the consents, we would be on hand at school, they would be done at the enrollment at the school, the parents fill out a consent to have the services done. It will be obviously online this time, that they will give the consent to have this screening done. We're going to, you know, hopefully we'll get those done as soon as possible. Coming back to the idea of fluid, what that will look like, I don't know. You know, kind of depends on what the regulations are and where we are with things. How we've done it in the past is we bring the kids into a centralized area by groups, about 8 to 12, depending on their age. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And we go through and we have them answer the questions by if they agree with the statement happens for them, never, sometimes, often, or almost always. And as we look through the screens, make sure everything's completed, and we look at what we call question 13. Question 13 is, I feel like my life is getting worse and worse. If they answer sometimes, often, or almost always, we're going to pull them aside immediately and just find out what's going on. It could be anything from, I don't go play video games all day, to maybe some suicidality or some concerns that have to be hotlined. And so obviously, in conjunctions with our Grandview folks, we make hotlines if we need to. We do suicide risk assessments and we'll get them immediate help if they score. If there's anything of concern on question 13. This year, what we found, so in the spring is what I'm focusing on here. We did 441 screenings total in the elementary. And when we get done here, I'll talk about the middle school a little more. And the next is just, as you're looking at the information, I'm not going to go into the numbers tonight. Just know that, you know, they can request to not have their data used in the report. And so 23 said that. So as you're going through the report, you'll see that there's only 418 that are reported, and that's why. In the middle school, we do it a little differently. In the middle school, we look at by referral, so that they're going to come to us by referral, and we're going to screen them as that referral comes in. We were able to do a total of 47 middle school students. We planned for 50, although there were 3 that did not get completed that were supposed to happen after spring break. So we were on target with the middle school. And again, there were some that denied that. So in the elementary, what we do is we look more at that universal screening, more trying to prevent some of those things. And then we build, based off of that, we will assign a therapist or care navigator. In the middle school, they don't have to necessarily be screened to get services. We're there to support both middle schools in any way that's needed. We're both our therapist and our navigator. All right, and then the next one would be 33, yeah, okay. Yes, 33, sorry, the screen I was looking at just disappeared. And again, as you're just reading through, I mean, it just gives the breakout in many different ways of what the numbers look like, comparing both fall and spring screenings.
Stop me when I get there.
Okay.
Breaks it down by individual grade level.
Right here, the post-screening services. So when we did it, this is speaking of spring, we attempted to contact 161 elementary families. That was everybody who screened elevated in one area. And then what we did is parents received a letter regardless that day that said, hey, your kid screened normal. You know, that's kind of the end of it. We're not, but here's where you can reach us if you have questions, or your child had elevated areas and expect a call from us. And so then we would call them to set up services should the parents like it, go over the screening results with them. At the end of May, I believe it was when this was done, 29 elementary families were receiving, no, sorry, this was before, the 29th before we went for spring break, 29 families were receiving services. 41 in the middle school were more targeted therapy services, but it's still like, maybe 30 minutes a week. And it wasn't as intensive as our elementary students, which received more traditional outpatient therapy, both in home and in school. As you see, we did 441 again, as we said in the spring. That was up from 433 in the fall. 37 students were completely new to the spring screening, and 29 who had screened in the fall did not rescreen in the spring. As with everybody, we've been trying to be really fluid and making sure that we're still meeting the needs of students. We are, Cornerstones of Care as an agency, we are still doing, we went straight to teletherapy, teleservices right away, and we're continuing to do that at least through August 1st. And we'll assess closer to that time, but right now our agencies, we're all working from home and doing phone and video at least through August 1st. What we did was we reached out to families as soon as we knew school wasn't coming back for services that was either ones who had already been receiving care navigation services or therapy services in the school. We reached out to them to see if they'd like to continue, as well as we looked at the results on the screening, and we again offered services to those 161 families who were interested in making sure that they could continue on. There were a total of additional 103 from the original screenings, and then 39 in the middle school were contacted. In the elementary, we ended up having 29 families that wanted to continue with case management and have been continuing through this time. 23 families continued on with therapy. Some of those were new, some of them just dropped off. 36 families we were unable to reach, and 14 declined services, and this was in the elementary. In the middle school, we had 7 families that received case management support. 19 families continued on with therapy with our therapist. 9 families were unreachable, and 4 families declined. And that's been kind of the bulk of what we've been working on. We've adjusted services to just, what do you need? How do you survive this time? Sometimes it was just, hey, you've got a person outside your home you can talk to, and just giving them that connection. So on to the recommendations based on what we've kind of been seeing. Obviously, recommendation 1 was to continue to provide universal interventions to students and families based on risks identified by screening data. What we did at the end of the spring screenings was we did a list by building, grade level, and gender that were elevated, and that was to be used to assign case management through our navigator as well as groups. Obviously, groups did not happen, and that's why, in case you're wondering, that's why we did gender was for groups. It did not happen, but we did continue to use that as a starting out point for making sure we're focusing on families for navigator services. And then in the middle school, they continued to provide those services. They just looked at the list they already had and who they were working with on a regular basis and reached out to them. Recommendation 2, provide professional development to school staff based on areas of need identified by the screening data. There was a training on vicarious trauma completed in January. There was to be a suicide prevention training in March, but it was the day, everything happened the day before break. And so that did not occur. We will continue to meet with overall large groups as needed for training, depending on how things move forward. And then we'll also look at, how can we maybe do some more targeted trainings by building if there's interest. So, recommendation 3, provide school-based wraparound services to students with significant risk. We did that by responding to all elevated scores and offered services. We were working really hard to partner with teachers and staff so that the students can receive extra support. One of the things we discovered and we're really want to make sure to be real mindful of next year is there were a lot of students who had a lot of the same students because of their scores, they were already getting services. So we're finding that there were some students who were getting overserved by the difference. So we want to work really hard to figure out how do we work with all of the supports that are in the school and that we're all communicating and meeting a larger need instead of overserving some of the kiddos. One thing we did internally was if they had therapy, we decided they didn't need case management. So just trying to make sure that we're using the best of our time and resources. And then we want to continue to work on how can we contact families, how can we get families involved and get that support going as well. Recommendation 4, provide expanded support from student interns. We're looking at the most efficient use of student interns. This last time they've been assigned by a school that has higher needs. So just get some extra coverage in some of those schools that have that higher need. And then they would pair with a navigator and a school counselor. They would also provide a lot of the group interventions. We do have 2 interns on hand dedicated to this program for the fall. Recommendation 5, provide a thorough description of services offered to school-based personnel. So we've been in here about 2 years in this program. I've been managing this program for a year now. I took over last June. And I think one of the things that I continue to feel for myself, as well as I kept hearing from the schools, is what do you guys do? What do we refer for? And hasn't been a really good description of what we do, what our things are. So we're going to really working this summer to put that together and to assess where those needs and resources are best used. And then by the time school starts out, we will be able to give a really good understanding to the middle school and the elementary what it is we're there to do and how they can utilize us based on what we know the needs are. And this is something new that has kind of come up in order to meet that need. Recommendation 6, implementation with cornerstones of care on Ross Green's collaborative and proactive solutions model to be implemented in work with schools, students, and caregivers. This is an internal model we want to work on that really addresses that every child wants to succeed. They just don't necessarily have the skill. Maybe they have lagging skills that keep them from succeeding. And so what we are trying to do is just use that language with this internally, as well as when we're working with teachers, students, in order to just be more consistent in our delivery. I like this program because it already matches with some of the other things you guys already have going on. So we'll adapt it to work within the system you already have. But it allows us to be able to talk in a way that hopefully will make more sense and be more consistent. And then we will kind of educate as we need to and work with them on what lagging skills are, how we can use this, and how we can support with that. Recommendation 7, develop an implementation timeline for that CPS model. Over the summer, we're going to work we've talked with Cheryl and Carla the most about how we're going to do a timeline to roll that out, what that will look like, how we're going to fit it in with the other programs already existing. And then we will, the goal is to collaborate with district personnel to plan an information timeline when we come back to school for whatever that looks like. And then in the introductory training, will be provided follow-up focused trainings for those who are interested. So it's not something that's going to be required, but it's just something that, hey, if you want to know what we're doing and you want to partner with us, we want to partner with you, here's what we got going on so they can get some information. Recommendation 8, COVID response. We will continue to provide therapy and case management support to at-risk students and families over the summer, and we're not going to stop. We'll start it up again in the fall. We'll work closely with the district to adapt our service delivery and approach as needed. There's a lot of questions out there. My biggest question, I guess, is what a screening is going to look like. I think those are things that we don't know yet, and we're going to have to wait and see how that plays out. But we are talking about some options. And then one of those changes has been that consent for screening is going to go online registration. Some of our process improvements is that all screenings will be adapted to meet the changes as COVID response continue to unfold. We work to get screenings hopefully done as early as possible in case we don't come back to school. If we're on virtual and we're not in school, I'm not sure what that looks like, to be honest. I mean that's a lot of students to try and get those screenings done, and I don't know what that looks like. So changes to entry of data, making sure that we're getting it more timely processing so we can, if we're in school, we can have groups going sooner, we can get that more targeted quicker. One of the other changes we made is we added a selection that talks about the overall score of the child, so that's starting in fall. So at the end of next school year, we would be able to report on if a child or if a group of children have improved with services or if we've seen a decline. So that is something we've not been able to do in the past. but we'll have the data in the system and a report where we're gonna report that will give us data on letting us really know, hey, are these services working? And then we'll just have a more streamlined approach for how we enter group notes and just getting that stuff more consolidated. I think that's what I have. Questions?
Working backwards, I'll just say real quick, everything she said at the end is certainly a conversation that we've had as a board, just as you requested of me additional information on how things are going. How do we know that some of the things that we are implementing and that we are doing are working? And so this is definitely part of our partnership there, and everything that she just said on the improvements on the backside is tracking some of those components. I provided some data initially and just some discipline things and such that these overall initiatives, but then breaking it down to this particular one, what are we seeing and how are we seeing these things improve in terms of behavior with our students? And so certainly with a whole quarter that we didn't collect data on, there's going to be some challenges with some of those components, but absolutely still excited about this partnership and what we're able to do, and it's continuing to grow and the expansion of what we're trying to accomplish. So certainly they're here to answer any questions for you.
I was gonna ask that same question, you know, it sounds like it's a process improvement, is that if a navigator or therapist is assigned to a student, how do you assess the success or change in that student? You know, what are you looking at? I didn't really see of all the data that you have of
Right.
demographics in the schools where the outcomes were.
We have not, that has not, that, and I will say that has been and that's where that will be coming. We can look individually by students by comparing their scores on the BAS to see if they changed. But that's not something we do on a full-time basis. That is something we will start with the next school year. So along with the 3 areas of scoring, they also have an overall score, and we'll be able to start comparing those overall scores to show how that's working and be a little more formalized in that.
I'll add to that one of the challenges to that obviously continues to be just privacy and making sure that there is a separation between us and them purposely. But the other challenge is as we bring in more organizations that begin to work, one of the things that we actually met about, I think it was February, really close toward the end of when we closed, was how do we make sure that our organizations are all working together too? So if I have 2 organizations that are all working together and all of a sudden both of them are working with the same kid, that's not an efficient use of their time. I don't need 2 and 3 organizations working with the same child. So they need to have some conversation and we need to look at that flow. So it was in one of their recommendations as well, just that flow. What's the flow chart look like in terms of at an individual school site? We're going to present this, and I have a student, and so therefore it goes to the counselor, and the counselor determines who goes. So that way it becomes more formalized, and then we don't have duplication of efforts. So
And so
a lot of process improvements.
Yeah, on that report that we sent out based on the screening where I broke it down by everything, the point of that was to say, hey, here's what we're seeing, you know, without reporting exactly where. We didn't say they were screened in these 3 areas, they're screened in 2. We just said they're screened, elevated by grade, you know. Which ones are already receiving services? Which ones would you like to see us focus on, as well as who would be good in groups? Maybe so that was kind of our rollout idea to try and get that started, was that we would present that to the schools, to the principal and the counselor, to be able to say, hey, you know your kids, what services are they already receiving?
Within the services, what constitutes a service? What's a service look like?
So we have a care navigator, or family resiliency navigator, and what they do is they're kind of like a case manager. They're bachelor's level, and they can go in and they can provide kind of whether that's support to the kid, whether they're meeting with them, teaching them some basic skills, whether that's working with the parents for resources, whether that is doing some classroom observations and finding out where they're struggling and trying to come up with some plans to help them in their classrooms. So they can kind of do just a lot of broad working with those students. At most, they would meet with them 20 to 30 minutes a week just to kind of see how the kids are doing and provide that. We also provide groups for students that it's appropriate to provide them for. And then we also have a therapist on hand in the elementary school. She has a caseload. She works very similar to what like an outpatient therapist would be. She's between 20 and 25 is how many she keeps on her caseload on a weekly basis. She might have more she works with, but she's probably gonna work with 20 to 25. And you're gonna see more traditional therapy services from her, and then working with the families, working individually, that kind of stuff. In the middle school, we use the term therapist, but it's more under a school social work model. So it is a master's level. Last year we had a professional counselor, a provisionally licensed professional counselor. This year we'll have a licensed master social worker. But they're going to follow more of that model where they're providing more generalized services to a larger range of kids that might need more intensive than what the navigator would give, but they can provide more intensive. However, if they need like really intense traditional outpatient therapy, they would be referred to someone else, whether that be someone within our program or someone else to the community, just so that we can meet as many kids. A lot of the middle school navigators work this last year was around attendance. And just really making sure what are the barriers to getting to school? Can we help you find ways to overcome whatever your barriers are? But then they're also available, all 4 of them are available for crisis services. And then they can provide crisis support at any level.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. Sure. So one around your slide around service delivery in elementary, and there are 14 families that decline services. So my kind of head scratcher about that is in the elementary, they only get screened if they say it's okay to get screened. So they're basically giving you permission to do this. So then for them to decline any services based on the results of that seems a little bit, again, head scratching. So any thoughts around why things like that happen and what you can do to mitigate that in the future?
So I think there's a couple things. One is I think just in general that it's a large push to sign the consents along with a whole bunch of other enrollment consents. So I don't think the parents always know exactly what it is they're consenting to.
Okay.
We do our best to explain what it is and what's going on. However, I'm not sure that they fully understand the scope. We also find like in spring, they're like, well, I consented in fall. I didn't consent for screening. Okay, but there's that piece in there that says you consented to 2 screenings, right? So I think there's some of that is really hard and they don't understand. I also think for the COVID, some of the reasons that they declined was they're overloaded. There's a lot going on and they just could not manage for whatever reason, or maybe it was they saw it as a school problem and they're not in school, so it's not a problem. The kids aren't struggling because they're at home and not dealing with the larger groups of kids. Some of them they don't have the resources. We were lucky, we got a grant from the Jackson County Children's Service Fund to provide iPads for us with the platform with Zoom attached to it that we could give to families who are in need. But still, some of your families, they're not good at using electronics, and I think some of them are like, this is gonna be temporary. We're declining for now, but we'll start back up when we're in person. So I think there were a number of reasons, and those specifically, I think, were just due to COVID specifics.
But COVID is kind of my second follow-up question. So thinking about that same scenario in the middle school, you mentioned that those screenings were from referrals. So any thoughts on what you're going to do with students if we can't go back to school and we're basing those on referrals? I mean, I'm thinking about my own kids and their level of happiness definitely went down not being at school. And so are there going to be some of those that we can't reach because we don't know because they weren't referred? So do you have any initial thoughts on how to overcome that?
I mean, I think some of my thoughts just as I've not had conversations, what's doable in school or whatnot, but, it's not as maybe as effective, but we, maybe setting out notifications to the parents of, hey, this is here, and letting the parents refer in if they see some problems with their students, but doing like more of a mass communication, but also educating the different people in the schools, in the middle school, who are in contact with the kids to say, hey, here's where we are, here's what we do, and here's how you can get your students involved in this service. And really focusing in on those, the ones who are still having a point of contact with them so that they can know kind of what to look for and to refer in. So hopefully a broad approach, but then also figuring out how to focus that in.
Carla, I, and Julie, we've already started working on how will we provide services, because we know there's gonna be a lot of students coming in that rock their world, and how we're gonna support them. So we've already started engaging in those conversations of that social emotional sports when school starts again. So we're already starting to, and Carla and I are also doing the same training, the CPC training that the therapists and the navigators do. So I spent the 4 hours with them this week and learning what they're going to be doing, so I have a really good handle on that. So we have already started that process, and I have reported that out to our code team last week, that is very much on our radar, that we're gonna have to be ready to go immediately when school starts.
And some of the conversations I'm having with my people is, don't get locked into what traditional therapy is. Don't get locked into what traditional services are, as you were saying earlier, it's all about being fluid. Just being there on the phone with someone, even if you're not meeting their traditional goals, just being on the phone, providing them an outside support, someone to talk to, even if they're just saying my life's fine and we're talking about video games, that is valuable for them. And so this idea that if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that you have to meet the bottom level basic life needs in order to be able to do anything, we may find that when we start back to school, what we've done before, we're not going to do. We just are available and helping mitigate crisis, helping with teachers, helping pull kids, whatever that looks like. It's probably not going to look like, even if we're in person, it's not going to look the same. So we've had those conversations about how do we meet where it is and how do we jump in new and innovative ways to meet that.
And I believe we've already, one of the therapists already had some of those, just touch base, hey, how's it going? Or just a conversation with some of her students she's been working with. And it was a very non-traditional conversation, let's say, in the mental health world.
Yeah, yeah.
And
In terms of that COVID-19 book, the social emotional has at least one full chapter. We know that we are going to have to continue to provide additional supports to our students and families, and we may not know that until the first time that we interact with them again. So we know that we got a lot of work to do in terms of that. It's all going to come down to those relationships again.
And we're really positioning ourselves to just be fluid and to figure out how can we
the
do.
2 interns are going to be helpful. So we've kind of added personnel, knowing that that's a we'll have a bigger, broader amount.
Any questions? Again, thank you very, very much.
Leonard, you're on mute. We see you talking, we just don't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You're good.
Okay. In talking about the social and emotional health of the children, in light of everything that's happening today with the social unrest and things that are going on, you're dealing with a community has been hurting, continues to hurt. How are you looking at addressing those issues? Because people are finally starting to talk about them a little bit more. So with that being said, there's a lot of understanding that has to be, I guess, learned and how to deal with some of that trauma and crisis. How are you addressing that?
So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, the focus tends to be, on the COVID stuff, but like even the race relations right now, our agency is a whole cornerstones of care. We follow the sanctuary model, which is very trauma informed. And we're having those conversations about what's going on, whether it be COVID, whether it be race relations. We're having those conversations. We're having talk sessions to kind of learn and discuss what that means, what that looks like. As a team, we talked about how does this affect you? How do you deal with it? How can we support you so that you're ready to support the others? And looking really at, based on your race, well, how is your part in this? How are you going to talk to someone of a different race? And so we're really having those conversations. And I've also encouraged everybody that, don't wait for this question to come up. We need to be going in, and whether it's starting with the parents, we need to bring these issues up, whether it be the health and safety of, due to COVID, whether it be the race relations. We need to be talking to them and saying, how are you doing? And allowing them, because sometimes these kids aren't going to talk about it because they don't know if it's safe or feel comfortable. If we bring it up to them, that gives them the knowledge that we're okay with you talking about it. And it has been able to open up some conversations for kiddos that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise if we waited for them to come to us. And so we're trying to have those conversations with both the parents and the children. And then I'm really preparing for, what is this gonna be like when we step back into school? What is this gonna make it look like for us? And what we're gonna have to deal with, and what these students and families are dealing with. So we're definitely continually having those conversations.
Thank you. All right, are there any other questions?
And I just appreciate the support and certainly appreciate the partnership. You know, I meet with Denise Cross, the CEO, as often as possible. We missed our fourth quarter appointment, but we meet and discuss what we can do to continue to partner together in the future. And we've looked at a kindergarten kind of approach and some other grants and some other things that we can continue and to evolve this partnership. So I know I appreciate it very much. And this has been a major piece of some of the reasons why we're having some successes with our students that I know need as many supports as we can put out.
I know we very much appreciate being a part of this. It's a great district to be involved with, and the support that the district as a whole gives to social and emotional health is just really amazing. And we very much value the partnership as well, allowing us to come in.
Thank you very much. That is it for that presentation, sir.
All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll go back to the regular scheduled programming. Program evaluations.
Move the camera a little too fast for everybody in the audience, so there we go. So we are going to go to the wellness program eval, and so this evening we have a little bit different. We were not able to have Ms. Rose with us this evening, who normally would do that presentation. So we are going to go through that. Myself and Ms. Myers are going to go through that. All right. Overall, you can see the people responsible and who's on this. We talk about this, quite a bit. I will say I've taken this very seriously since I've been in the district. I've been a part of this since my first year as an assistant superintendent, and I'm very proud of what we've done, health and wellness. Part of that presentation leads into this perfectly because whenever I first got here, certainly our conversations were around the physical side of what was going on with wellness, but we didn't talk as much about the social emotional side of that as well. So certainly we've done a number of different things to be able to expand upon all aspects of health around this part of the district. So just the overall evaluation of the program, and Ms. Myers, I'm not sure where you want to jump in, what do you want me to do? But
Just stop right there at strength or
Yep.
There are a couple of bullets that Mary would ask me to highlight under strengths. Number one being the last bullet there, administrative support at highest levels. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. King both serve on our steering committee, which meets several times a year typically. And so it's nice to have on a committee a couple of big dogs so that when we need assistance, we have their support. If you roll over to the next page, one other thing we want to point out is our community partners. We have a lot. This is a list of a few, and you got a taste of that actually just a moment ago about partnering that we do in our district as it relates to wellness. I'm not gonna be able to do this, and maybe with Kenny's help we could, but I don't think even together we're gonna do this the way Mary would. She's written it all down for you. I'm not gonna read that to you. I would just highlight a few things, and between the two of us, maybe on each bullet, on the next couple of pages, we'll just underscore for you. Under the nutrition side, which of course Sodexo takes care of us for us, that is Sandra Reyes is the manager of that program. They continue to do some find innovative ways to feed students. What's highlighted here is breakfast in the classroom that was done at Butcher Green. I would also say that please read that last sentence about the number of total meals that were served during the closure. This was when this was written, so it has exceeded 100,000 at this point. Pretty awesome. Anything you want to add there, Dr. Reagan?
Certainly, we've talked a lot about, those pieces. I mentioned, we may all be doing breakfast in the classroom next year at every one of our sites. So certainly something that we have a little bit of experience with, but then we're still feeding kids. We're still giving out, probably 1,500 to 1,800 meals a week. So every given day is around 500 meals. So we're still doing that. And so when it says it and still counting, that's definitely what she needs. Right now, it's going to go through the end of June, and then we'll reevaluate what that may look like. But right now, our plans are just to finish. And that's typically what we've done, is to kind of go through that point. So certainly, we'll see what the world looks like at the end of the month, but that's our plan right now, is to complete that in June.
Under physical education, I would just want to highlight the rather interesting kind of cross-curricular program they did in PE with health and history. You can read the details about it there, but I thought that, and there's a couple of pictures, I think, and supporting documents that shows kids participating in that program and those projects. Also, once again, talking about partnerships, I mean, we partnered at the high school with the fire department, police department to assist with CPR and Heimlich training. We've also partnered with UMKC and the Coterie. And so, once again, partnerships seem to be a really important part of this program.
I'd say the same thing, that the community partners continue to make these pieces very valuable and definitely a highlight in that regard.
Under mental health, and of course, along that same line about partnerships, you just learned from one of our the greatest partners we've had for the last few years is Cornerstones of Care. We've also partnered recently with Rediscover, and I'm not sure I have this background correct, but we've used Rediscover before. Right now it's at the high school, and I think that's what that means. Is first program. It's gone really well. Rediscover, in essence, I think, provides almost like I would say on-demand counseling as needed for kids. And then there's, you can read about GAP and a grant funding program called Putting Students First.
Yeah, that's the one that I would highlight, is just, again, something else that's going to be different. And it actually was an MOU that we brought to the board previously, and just in terms of our students who are homeless. And the goal of this particular partnership is to try to intervene prior to a family becoming homeless. And so that's usually, there's a lot of things in place for a family once they become homeless, but leading up to, there's a lot of steps that happen. And if we can intervene there, they will not become homeless. So part of this grant is to help some of our homeless families, but it's also specifically designed to try and prevent somebody from becoming homeless. And so very excited about how this has kind of worked. And initially, as far as just had been in place for almost right around the time of our closure, but they are still working with families automatically. And initially, just for a few months, Cheryl was here, she showed the same thing, just the initial pieces that's working very well thus far. So I'm really excited about that piece as well.
Staff wellness, we've been blessed to have Janet Melton, who comes to us from the St. Louis.
Yes.
And Blue Cross Blue Shield helps fund that, I believe. She's done numerous things, STEP program and lots of PD for classified and so forth. We just want to highlight a few unique things this time, which is, you can read about the Happiness Journal, where people were encouraged to follow happiness prompts for 6 weeks. It was offered to everybody. About a third of our staff chose to do that, which is, I thought, was pretty neat. And then I would say down at the very last sentence down there, this was a unique thing too, where she set it up such that every point in the district who wanted to would have a meeting one-on-one with a registered dietitian, a fitness coach, and a financial planner. So that was a great offering for employees.
Yeah, I continue to think that this is one of the most unique things that we have in the district. Previous districts I've been at have not had something like this, and nationally, ones that I see, this is one of the pieces that is always coveted to have a person or have a position that is in charge of something like staff wellness. So it's an extremely vital part of our district, in my opinion, and certainly Janet has done a fantastic job around it.
Under health services, once again, talking about our community partners, Cerner Healthy Kids provides health screenings. Cass County Community Foundation, the dental screening program. They also, we're just starting to read about that in the consent agenda on the new teledentistry pilot they're doing here. So we have great partnerships with them, and it's a real benefit for us then to help families identify what the needs are, health needs are for their students. And then I would say that, Ed, did you want to tack on to that particular piece of it? Our school health coordinator, Mary Rhodes, has a really good and close relationship with people at Jackson County Health Department. They are constantly providing information which she then shares out, and especially right now around the whole COVID stuff. And I would say that Mary would especially want me to, she does this every year, so I'm going to do it on her behalf, and again, probably not nearly as well as she would, but thanking the board for supporting the community garden, which was initiated in 2012 out at the bus farm. Continue to have a variety of gardeners who farm out there. I happen to be one of them. Last year, there were over 600 pounds of produce that were eaten by gardeners and or shared with Grant Assistance Program. And as she always says as well, our blackberries are looking great. They're not ripe yet, and we can't commit Dan Bedwell to this, but she oftentimes makes some blackberry jelly, and she likes to share with you, so hopefully you can look forward to that.
And I'll just share in terms of this particular piece, certainly for the new board members that may not have had as many interactions, but the amazing things that Mary Rose does. I would say this if she was here anyways, she would just be more upset at me if she was here and I was still saying it, but she does so many things as our district person around health. And it's not just one perspective, but a veteran of our district, but also just someone who has a unique look on so many different things that we end up pulling her into a lot of different things that may not necessarily be directly related to her field, but just her knowledge base is so advanced. And she just has a great way about her anyways, but she's extremely knowledgeable about so many different things. We put together a lot of different plans, but especially in light of when we shut down starting in March, she has been right before we shut down, and ever since then, she is who we go to about just about everything. So when we say, you know what, that's a good idea, I think that's what we need to do. Hey, we need to run that by Mary Rose. She has been a contact, as was stated, with Jackson County Health, but also just an individual that we run so many different things by on what our plans should be and what we should be doing and such. But we do that anyways with her, but certainly she is just a little bit of everything to everyone in every building that she's at, especially at the high school, obviously where her home base is. But I certainly wouldn't do it justice if I didn't at least say something about how amazing that she is and how much I do appreciate all the things that she does and contributes to this district.
And then I would just lastly point out a couple of challenges we've had with the program this year. As you can understand, because of school closure, we were unable to complete a program of assessment tool that we intended, and also, of course, because of COVID-19. Certainly, the wellness of staff, students, and families is a concerning challenge for us. And I think Dr. Rodriguez would happily answer any of your questions.
Absolutely.
That ball over, didn't she?
And she did very quickly.
Kenny, I would just say, I want to piggyback on what you said and just say that the comments about Mary Rhodes were just spot on. She has been there, she's done quite a bit and continues, and I'm happy to have her as part of the team. The scary thing is, though, we have so many people that fit that, and that's the one thing I love about our district, or one of the things that I love about our district. We have many people that go above and beyond, and it's just because of who they are, and we have quite a few that do that. So thank you for recognizing her. And just for the new board members who haven't had the blueberry jelly, it is absolutely awful. If you don't want it, I'll take care of it for you. I will do that as a team member, just so you know.
Take one for the team.
Very, very sweet of him to do that. He cannot have.
This is my third year and I've never gotten blackberry jelly.
I know,
What's happening
it's
with
actually
it?
been a lean, it's been kind of a lean time for the last year.
Was it?
I feel like I got, maybe he stole my jelly, I don't know.
Well, that's very entirely possible.
No comment. And on that note, any other questions? All right, Kenny, we can move on to the next one. Oh, wait.
Require a motion, sir.
Yep, that's what I said. Hold up, sorry. Entertain a motion, please.
I move we approve the program evaluation for wellness as presented.
Been properly moved and seconded that we approve the program evaluation for wellness as presented. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Jack Cornforth.
Aye.
Danny Green.
Aye.
Don Kessinger,
Aye.
Monica Terry,
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Now we can move on to the next one. Curriculum and instruction update.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a brief update from Dr. King, and I think this will be something that we'll put most likely on the July meeting, as well as we are be closer to school at that point. But just ask that she share a little bit about what's been kind of going on and what we've been kind of doing, and then certainly kind of a little bit about the last few months and kind of where we're headed. So, Dr. King.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So I thought I would start off by saying what doesn't change, because there's been so many changes. So if we focus on what's not going to change, whether we are brick and mortar or we are remote or if we're a hybrid throughout it. So what doesn't change then, what the district has been promoting for the last 2 years is these disruptions to poverty or disruptions to a culture mindset. And the first one is caring relationships. What we have to figure out, caring relationships are non-negotiable, but what does that look like in a remote setting, and what does that look like in brick and mortar, and how do we navigate those two seamlessly? The second one thing that doesn't change is high expectations. Whether it is going to be remote or whether it is in the classroom, we're going to have to have high expectations and provide the support to reach those, scaffold up to those high expectations for those struggling. And that includes both staff and students with higher expectations. The third that we have talked about a lot, and that I think I think we should talk about it even more, is committing to equity on all levels. And what the going remote school closure highlighted for us is the inequities that always existed. We knew they existed, but the four walls of a classroom could minimize them somewhat. And when you go remote, it no longer minimizes those inequities and they are magnified. So I think that committing to equity across the board in every aspect is going to be key, no matter where we're at. And the last one, accepting personal responsibility for learning, is we can no longer accept a blame game in any way, shape, or form in education, period. It cannot be the student's fault. It cannot be the parents' fault. It cannot be COVID's fault. It cannot be anybody's fault. We have to take personal responsibility as educators for learning, no matter what circumstances we find ourselves in, and do our best. And then finally, the last thing that we will be promoting a lot that I think our teachers have and our staff has shown so much of is the courage and the will to take action. Forced to go remote over two to 3 days, and what that was going to look like, and being able to roll with it, and actually providing the best education we could provide. And I've said many, many times that our virtual learning program was emergency learning. It was reactionary. But if it is reactionary next year if we're transitioning back and forth, then that's a shame on us, because we can no longer afford to be reactionary. We must actually be promoting and having it intentionally planned, knowing that it is a reality, whether it's a snow day or whether it is a pandemic. We're going to need to be more flexible in our approach to education. So those are the things that are not going to change no matter where we're at. But having said that, we know that we are planning on multiple levels. And I know, Monica, you had asked a question. So what is that looking like? What I have charged my team with is we plan for it all. We plan for all coming back. You plan for half coming back. You plan for a fourth coming back. You plan for being all remote and anything in between. So you have to have an approach that's going to work no matter what it is. And one of the biggest feedback we got from parents is the platform we used, or how they could navigate. We needed a one-stop shop for parents to go to that's going to have communication on it, announcements, everything will be right there. And so that's really what we're heading for now is how do we find that one platform that we can manipulate and negotiate with to provide the education that we know we need to provide, but it provides that backdrop that's going to remain the same K-12, so that parents will not have to navigate through multiple platforms or log on here, do this here. So we are researching that, and then that platform could still be used in the classroom. We've got to look at our technology. We have enough to be one-to-one. With the exception of a Meadowmere, which will next year be a title building. So we'll be able to use that to help give them the devices that they're going to need. But if we are planning every child have their own device and they can take these devices home back and forth, what is that going to look like? What supports are they going to need? What kind of training are parents going to need? All of these things are playing into our daily conversations about how we roll out every aspect of this, and the training that needs to go in for parents, for students, for our staff on what this can look like and what this will look like. What this has proven and shown to me and countless other educators across the country is we have teachers who truly care and will go above and beyond and can change. So they've proven they can change. They've proven they can change quickly. So it's no longer a question of, can a system change? It can change. It's just, are we leading it in a way that we're going to create lasting, substantial change that impacts student learning in a different way? And so in your what my board item there, I list the 4 things that we are really looking at for how we affect learning, whether brick and mortar or whether we're away, and how do we make it more relevant to students? How do we make that they want to learn, not for a grade, not for any other sense other than the fact that it means something internally and they're able to, they see relevance and they see purpose in it. That marries so closely with the Kauffman work that we've been doing with market value assets and what we're trying to do with our students. That cannot let up, no matter if we're in school, hybrid or out. We will have to make sure that work continues because it's important and it matters. And so so Dr. Rodriguez is fond of asking us what keeps you up at night? What is the thing that keeps you up at night? And if there was only one thing, I think that would be better. It's all of these things that keep me up, because I know how important it is. And I know how many people are depending on us coming through and providing this atmosphere, this collaborative atmosphere that's going to promote education. That's kind of in a nutshell. I mean, it would take me hours and hours and hours to go through everything that we plan on. We've got a blackboard up about every single thing that comes up, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions. And then as things become more clear and solidified, we'll be able to give you more concrete plans. Questions?
I love your enthusiasm. Thank you.
I love this stuff. I really do. And I believe in teachers, and I believe in the system and education. I think that we've needed a jolt. We've needed something for a while. And I have a tendency to look for the silver linings and things. And I feel like we've been handed one and we can't waste the opportunity.
All right, well, thank you for that.
That-
Any other questions? If not, I believe this was informational. Yes.
Yes, sir.
So we can move on to the next, workforce excellence. And I don't.
No items.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
No items submitted this evening, sir.
Okay, we'll move on. Resource stewardship, organizational efficiency, focus area. Get to the money.
We do have a few items here and a few things to give you some updates on. So it's kind of in a three-part, we'll kind of run through, but certainly they're all connected. So Ms. Cook, we'll start with the budget amendment.
Yeah, the first item for your consideration tonight is an amendment to our current year budget. We always do one final amendment at the end of the year to kind of represent where we believe we'll be for this year. The item itself shows and outlines where we started the year, the amendments that have already been approved by the board throughout the year, and then the amendments submitted for approval for this evening. It is broken down by our operating funds, which, as a reminder, are funds 1, 2, 5, and 6, our debt service fund, and our capital projects fund. We typically try to focus on attachment number 2, which is kind of the adjustment, if you will. And that is broken up into 3 sections: operating transfers, revenue adjustments, and expenditure adjustments. A couple things I would highlight on the operating transfers, given some of the adjustments to our revenue this year, Dr. Rodriguez and I spoke and agreed that we should reverse the operating transfer from Fund 1 to Fund 4 on a few of these items to provide the resources back to Fund 1, our operating funds, and allow our Fund 4 balances to pay for those items. On the revenue adjustments, some of them are just some end-of-year adjustments. A couple worth noting, obviously, is our state aid for this year. Even for just this year, we expect about $300,000 reduction. Again, our transportation, which was hopefully underfunded to begin with, has taken a hit again this year. The other big change that you will see is the M&M surtax. That is one of the tax revenues that the district, the board actually has the latitude to place that revenue wherever it is appropriate. We've gone back and forth with this for years. For many years, we've had that revenue source in Fund 4 to help support some of our capital projects beyond our bond funding. We feel that for this year and moving forward, we need to recognize half of that in our operating funds to help fill the gap, for lack of a better word. So that is an amendment that is included in this adjustment as well. As I said, on the expenditure side, so mostly ups, a few downs, just based on what's happened. And like I say, that's really just to kind of close out our year and align our expenditures with the patterns that we've had this year. So as you can see, budgetarily, approval of these will put us at a fund balance. It will cause a deficit of about $680,000 for the year. Reduce our fund balance to about 14.5%. That's lower than we want. As a reminder, what we've got, the thing we have working against us right now is as far as our percentage for our fund balance, as the amount of our fund, as our reserve goes down, that impacts it. But also as our expenditure, that percentage is based on our expenditures. So as our expenditures go up, and the amount of our balance goes down, it kind of has a double impact. if you will, on that percentage. So those two things in combination budgetarily will put us at about 14.5%. And moving forward, the next item on the 3-year forecast, we'll talk about what that means for where we are now, next year, and in time to come. So happy to respond to questions. Otherwise, we would request approval of this budget amendment to close out our current fiscal year.
And these amendments don't have anything to do at this point with the funding changes that have recently been announced, right? This is all strictly from everything prior to the governor making all those reductions, right?
Yeah, I'd say yes and no, because part of that was their announcement, part of it was, we are cutting some of this year's budgets. So back in April or March-ish, when they were talking about it, they said your budgets are not going to be cut through the end of this year. Then they had to come back and take that back. And so budgets have changed three times over the course of the last month and a half in terms of their cuts to us, and setting us up then also for additional cuts starting in July 1, which will show in the 3-year forecast. So this kind of ends the year, but this is still highlighting part of those cuts that he's already identified and said, we have a shortfall, therefore we're going to go ahead and take this money from the school team.
We'll see the rest of it in the 3-year forecast.
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
So yes and no to your questions.
Okay.
All right. There any other questions? No further questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the budget amendments as summarized in the background information and delineated in attachment number 2.
Second.
Been properly moved and second that we approve the recommendation as presented. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Chuck Swamport.
Aye.
Damon Green.
Aye.
Don Kessinger.
Aye.
Monica Terry.
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next up. Budget update.
Yes, sir. That now feeds us into the 3-year forecast. And again, something that we do regularly with the board to make sure that everybody understands kind of what's coming. Maybe a little bit more exciting this year in terms of things that we're seeing and such was alluded to earlier. So we'll kind of go through there, and if there's additional questions, and obviously happy to try to respond to as much as we can about what our potential plans would be. So let's go.
Yeah, to provide a general overview of the attachment, particularly for our newer board members that may not have seen this. We always look at obviously our current year and then the next 3 years, and every year we do this as a rolling 3-year forecast. We have it broken up into kind of revenue adjustments, expenditure adjustments for the upcoming years, and then down the bottom we explore what that looks like and the impact it would have on our fund balances. As you look at, like I said, the first column is always for the current fiscal year, and so that just outlines where we think we'll end up. I do think we will end up with a deficit of about $800,000. Budgetarily, it's not that bad, but also budgetarily, I think, as I mentioned, I don't think we will get some of our tax revenues, so I think it will be a little lower than we anticipated. And so I think we'll end the year. The bright side is I think we'll have lower expenditures than budgeted as well. So that will help us. I really think we'll end the year at about 14.65%. For next year,
I don't mean to interrupt, but you're trailing off at the end. I don't know if I'm the only one having that issue, but I can hear you kind of strong starting out, then you trail off at the end.
okay, sorry, I'll try to keep it strong.
Oh, thank you.
For next year and the years moving forward on the revenue adjustments, I do think we actually, this is going to sound strange, but I think we actually will see an increase in our property taxes. As a reminder, any new construction, we are allowed to recognize that. So I know it hasn't been a booming year, but there will be some, and that also includes personal property. Where I think we might have, we may be okay even though, you know, after last year, there were a lot of people that were unhappy with the assessment process that took place. We know there were a lot of protests. As I mentioned earlier, we got over $1 million in protest tax distributed to us this in June. But even if Board of Equalization has been continuing to work, and so they're still adjusting our assessed valuation. But the way that the formula works, on your existing properties, you're allowed up to a CPI increase. And so even if that assessed valuation is lower, it looks at last year, it allows you that CPI increase in revenue, and then it's a formula based as to how you get to your tax levy. We had rolled back our tax levy significantly last year to generate the revenue that we received. So if our assessed valuation is actually down a little bit this year, we're allowed to get that CPI increase, which won't be a lot, you know, usually between 1% and 2%. But hey, I'll take it. And then the tax levy would just be adjusted. So we should see a modest, it won't be a lot, but we should see, I would expect a modest increase in our tax revenues this year. I know it sounds contrary to everything I've been reporting this evening, but we kind of have a reset with the assessed valuation and setting the tax levy again. The second line you'll see is a reduction in state aid of $230,000. We really expect about a $530,000 cut, but in the amendment you just approved, you built in a $300,000 cut from the budget, which will be used as the baseline for next year's budget. So we expect about a $500,000 cut with the information that we have right now. They kind of committed that they wanted to let us know about it because they were going to hit us with it in July, but then that would be it. But I'm a little skeptical of that, and I hope it's true, but I think we need to be prepared that it could get better, but it could get worse, and we'll just have to monitor that and update and report accordingly. On the expenditure anticipated, and then moving forward in the future years, again, would expect some modest increases in assessed valuation. And we do show a restoration of our state aid in the next 2 years. I think we expect next year will be tough, but we have not seen indicators that this is going to be as long lasting maybe as like in 2008, pardon me, that really took a long time to recover from. We're hoping for a little bit speedier recovery over the next 2 years, that hopefully state funding can get restored to the level, at least where we were this year. So you'll see that restoration back into that funding source over the following 2 years. On the anticipated expenditures, for salaries and benefits, that's already been approved by the board. The retirement increase, that's really not, the percentage of our contribution has not changed. That's been constant for years. However, with increased salaries and increased insurance comes an obligation for our matching retirement contribution will have an increase as well. We do have, you approved in the consent agenda tonight, the proposals for work comp property and liability insurance. That did go up about $27,000. That was primarily on our property insurance. And a lot of that was due to the fact that they've gone through and actually increased the value of our buildings quite a bit. They started a process where every year they're going through and looking at different buildings to make sure that we're adequately and accurately covered for what our buildings are worth. So that is the primary driver in that increase. We do have a small increase for instructional resources. That for next year, whether that is textbooks or devices, I mean, what instructional resources look like has changed over the years. So that will be up to the CNI team to determine what is the most appropriate use of that funding source. We also, on a good side, we do anticipate an FTE reduction of 195,000. That is 3 teachers, and that is not really having an impact in the classroom. That is every year Ms. Deanda works with all the principals in looking at the staffing patterns and anticipated enrollment numbers for next year. And so through that, with the anticipated estimated kiddos that we'll have, we are able to recognize a few teacher savings that will be done through attrition. We're not doing a RIF or anything along those lines. We are just not hiring for some folks that have left either for other opportunities or retirement. And then through the tech budget, we are reducing that budget. Although that doesn't necessarily mean that their current funding will be reduced that much, because they have, over the years, we have developed we have an activity fund where we've been putting the insurance, kind of the insurance payment from parents, et cetera. And so there's a bit of a balance in there that we can use to help support some of the technology initiatives. So we feel we can reduce that budget by a little bit in the coming year. So that kind of is all the anticipated ins and outs for next year. Again, you know, if we, obviously we're spending more, and probably next year our revenue increases is a deficit, so that's not headed in the right direction. But on the bottom section, what we typically do is we have 3 sections. One is for what our fund balances would look like over the next several years, if we are able to do any kind of reallocation for those anticipated expenditure adjustments. The next section says, okay, if you don't do anything and you just continue to increase your expenditures at a rate far greater than your increase in revenues, here's what your fund balance will do. And then at that bottom section, it's not active right now, but that is what it would look like if we've done reallocations at a certain level that's been approved by the board. That would kind of keep a running tally of what that fund balance would look like. So at this point, we expect our fund balance to go down next year. It may turn out a little better. We're usually pretty conservative about this. But as you can see, particularly in that center section, without reallocations, if we don't make concerted efforts to either make some significant cuts, our fund balance gets to levels that are uncomfortable, to say the least, and I don't think healthy. So the choices we will have will be to either make some cuts, not have any kind of salary increases, or as we've talked about just tangentially in the past, you know, at what point do we discuss possibly going to our public for a levy election? It's been about 15 years since the last time that we've gone to the public to ask for additional funding, and so that will be part of our conversations over the next 6 months or so.
And certainly there's even a possibility of any number of those things happening at the exact same time. Certainly for our newer board members, this is a conversation that I've been having with the board for a couple of years, but certainly this school year and leading into January and on, prior to anything that happened, we've been discussing the next bond. When I first became superintendent, the first thing that I said was there was a bond that we were getting ready to do that we envisioned that would probably be the same amounts that we traditionally had done, which is around $9 or $10 million. But I said we will be poised to potentially need and want to look at a larger bond in the next few years after this one. We were at that point. So this year we've been having this conversation several different moments. Last summer did a workshop, talked about whether April of 2020 was the right time for that, and decided to put that off into April of 2021. So this conversation will be revisited over the next few months, and certainly in our workshop as well, of just what the board would like to do moving forward and what our recommendation will be to take to you, but certainly without your support. Certainly wanting to make sure you gain your input in terms of what does the board want to do moving forward. So certainly those numbers don't make me very happy and concern me a great deal, but this was already a conversation that we were starting to have. It just took an interesting turn. So as she said, we've been told that you will be deemed, so to speak, in July, and then we will hopefully be able to come back to you as the year progresses and provide more money back to you. That's their goal. So my hope is that they are able to realize that as the economy is able to recover. But a lot of things can change in that particular point in time, and we have to be ready for whatever happens. So we can't count on that, as Ms. Cook stated. So we will be prepared for what needs to happen, and that will include these conversations with the board around potential levy increase and some other things that we could potentially do to help mitigate some of the numbers that you see before you.
Is there a specific target on the unrestricted fund balance that?
Thank you, I should have led with that. Ding, 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 yes. Our board, you have established a goal of 18% plus or minus 2%. If you look, there's no magic number for that, it varies from district to district. For a variety of reasons, 18% kind of puts us in a strong position to not have to borrow funds, you know, for gap funding until our tax revenues come in. You will see districts that have upwards of 30% reserves. That's not us. So you'll see a lot of districts with lower reserves. We can have that conversation at some point too, but this board several years ago determined that 18% plus or minus 2%.
Okay.
So we're not meeting our goal at this point.
Right.
Other questions?
All right. Doesn't sound like there are any other further questions. That means we can move on, Kenny.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So based upon A and based upon B, we now have a preliminary budget for 2021. You can see those particular pieces. And so, Ms. Cook, you want to walk us through briefly?
Yes, the way we typically develop our budget is we start with our final budget from the current year, and this does show the final budget. It's kind of presumptuous that you would approve the amendments that were presented. We then deduct, at least for the operating funds, we then deduct the grants from the current year, both on the revenue and expenditure side, because they were grants and so they're not guaranteed. On the expenditure side, back in September, you approved some expenditures that were going to carry over from the prior year. We had to add back in the adjustments for the transfer out that we did back in September as well. And then on the anticipated adjustments, those figures come from the 3-year forecast that you just looked at. So based on that information, our operating for our operating funds, we would have a preliminary budget, the revenue side of $53,471,917, and on the expenditure side of $55,269,328. Fund 3, as a reminder, is our debt service fund. Revenues of approximately $6.8 million. That is predominantly from our dedicated tax levy. Expenditures of $6 million. That's actually a little higher for next year. You may recall earlier this year, the board approved a prepayment of a bond, and that will occur next year. We have that money sitting in escrow now and will be paid off next year. Then on Fund 4, which is our capital projects fund, on the revenue side, we only have $485,000. That's that half of that M&M tax that we recognize there. But we do anticipate expenditures of about $2 million because we do still have some bond funds left. We issued the last of our bonds last summer. That's what we're using this summer to do our projects and some prepayment for some stuff next year. So those are the budgets, the preliminary budgets for the year. I'm happy to respond to questions. As far as the attachments, really, attachment 1 is just showing, documenting the budget tracking, showing the grants that we are backing out. And then attachment 2 is just the 3-year forecast that we were just reviewing.
All right. Are there any questions, concerns, issues, anything? And if not, we'll entertain a motion.
Yes, so my technology died, so you can just scroll down or someone else can do the motion right now. I hope we adopt preliminary budgets for the fiscal year 2020-2021 as outlined in background information.
Been properly moved and second that we adopt the preliminary budgets for the fiscal year 2020 and 2021 as outlined in background information. We get a roll call vote, please.
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Chuck Cornford,
Aye.
Damon Green,
Aye.
Don Kessinger,
Aye.
Monica Terry,
Aye.
Leonard Green,
Aye. Thank you very much. Motion carries. I just want to say, Ann, thank you. Oh. I just wanted to say thank you for being as conservative as you are. It always helps us out. I know we're in a much better position than some of the other districts, but thank you for constantly being vigilant on this because we have to be good stewards of our money. So thank you. Next up, family and community involvement, but we moved that one up. So we will move on to number 5.
No, I haven't submitted this evening, sir.
All right, so that leaves us now with report of board members and agenda request. Who would like to start?
I can start.
Kathy, you can stop sharing the screen.
Awesome.
So last Friday, actually Don Foy and I both attended a virtual leadership retreat workshop with MSBA called Igniting Great Ideas, which I thought was pretty cool. And there were a couple things that I just wanted to share. They had a lot of hot discussion, and this was from 8:30 to 4, just so you know, it was an all-day thing. So there's a lot of Zoom happening, but a lot of discussion obviously around COVID, reopening plans that different districts are doing. Some things that I thought were really interesting that they mentioned, and I honestly hadn't thought of, was, you know, Kenny, you mentioned earlier, you know, what do you do for band and choir, and one of the things they said was wind instruments. You're blowing air into an instrument in a room full of kids, or you're singing out loud, and, you know, in a room full, and how do you handle that? And I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, my kid plays the trumpet, and I didn't think about what he's blowing out of his trumpet, you know? You know, something like if the principal gets COVID and they're around everyone, now what do? You know, these are things that I just was like, wow, that's kind of cool. And not cool in a good way, just so you know. And then they went through a lot of, there was a whole session on the board's role in reentry planning and things like that. But my favorite was a session on addressing the social emotional needs of students. And so, you know, we've had a conversation about that, and that honestly, that's one of my most concerns about the situation. And not even just related to COVID, and you know, we know it's been one of your major concerns for years. But there are a few statistics that I wrote down because it was so interesting, and I wanted to just share them. So, you know, 7 out of 10 students are dealing with mental health issues. 8 out of 10 don't feel comfortable reaching out about those mental health issues. And I think we kind of probably knew that, but what I was most concerned about, and I would like your take on this, Dr. Rodriguez, and whether you think that this is higher or lower in our district, but is that on average, only 2 out of 10 teachers actually feel comfortable in having those conversations and helping with students who are having these concerns. And I know we've worked really hard to make that better in our district through various programs and workshops and things. And so I just kind of wanted your take on whether or not you think that's spot on for here, higher or lower.
You know, if I had to throw out an arbitrary number, I'd probably say that ours might be a little bit higher than that. But I think that's also one of the reasons why we didn't just approach it as, let's train all of our teachers and make sure that our teachers feel more comfortable and confident because they need to be the ones doing this. We wanted to make sure to bring in experts in the field that can provide that support. But you saw on one of the slides earlier with Cornerstones that one of the things that they do also with all of our staff is they do trainings. And so they are providing more information to our staff that I think over the last 2 years in particular has helped them become more confident with that. But I don't know if there's ever going to be a time that most of our staff are going to say, you know what, I feel really confident dealing with mental health supports and issues because they're constantly evolving and changing. So I think our goal is always to have a hybrid approach. You can't change that relationship with the teacher and the classroom teacher every single day, but there's any number of different opportunities for staff members to interact, but then see a challenge. And so what should that teacher do at that time, and then referring it to a counselor, but then we didn't want to just throw everything on counselors as well. So being able to have multiple layers of supports and availabilities to do that. You talk about 8 out of 10 don't really want to provide that and talk about it. That's one of the reasons why we also have the student assistance program as well. is to make sure that, hey, you don't want to talk to anybody right now, but you need someone to talk to, and we always want you to have that number. So, sometimes we present that information, it's like we had, 13 kids take advantage of that. Well, is that enough kids to take advantage of it? It's like, I don't know, but 13 kids took advantage, that might be 13 kids that wouldn't have had any other option besides that. So I think that's our goal, is to always have as many opportunities and things as possible. But, I don't know that any of our staff are necessarily going to be in the 8 or 9 out of 10 and feeling comfortable dealing with that, because I think what they feel comfortable, processing and dealing with, they're going to say, well, I'm not an expert in that. But that doesn't mean, even as you heard, they can call and talk to kids. They can just be a voice. They can just, be that person on the other line. It doesn't always have to be, well, how does that make you feel? Really processing through these. It's just, hey, I'm here. If you ever need something, call me. I may not be the one to help you and deal with this and process this, but I'm always here, and I can help you and provide supports and put you in touch with somebody that can get you additional information.
Well, if you think about the comment you made, 13 kids use the student assistance program. According to statistics, on average, 70% of your population has some sort of concern. 80% of those don't feel confident in doing that. Well, 13 is not even close to 70%, or even 80% of 70%, right? So, or 20% of 70%. So, thoughts on how we can make that better?
I think the other part of statistic that I didn't talk about was what part of our staff are dealing with mental health issues as well.
Themselves, yeah.
And so I think that's part of this as well, is our continual dual approach of as many supports as we possibly can. Go back 3 years ago in conversations that I have with students of, number one thing that they were telling me is, I just need more people. I need somebody else to talk to. And so that's been our goal. Number one, try to provide as many opportunities and people to interact. When we look at some of the safety surveys and things like that, is there at least one person in every building that our kids feel comfortable talking to about challenges? Is there one person in the building that you can go to if you need support? And that number is continuing to increase, but it's not anywhere close where we want that to be. So we keep tracking all those pieces, but we keep talking to kids and just trying to increase the amount of opportunities for them to talk to individuals, but then continue to train all our staff members, because like I said, you can't replace that individual teacher in the classroom, but as I tell the entire staff, there are at least 3 other staff members that interact with a student before they even reach the classroom. So our bus drivers need to make sure that they are, what are you looking for when students get on the bus? That kid's behavior has changed today. So, hey, maybe I just tell somebody when I drop the kids off, hey, something's going on. I don't know what that is, but I just want to let somebody know. So as they walk in the building, so it's all of our staff working together, not just our teachers, which I think is a different approach maybe than some other.
And wrap up, it just, for everyone, I know that it's not always possible, and I had to take a PTO day to do this, but the Zoom meeting was really cool. I mean, I didn't have to travel to go see this or, whatever, but I would just encourage you, if there are other workshops that you can attend, absolutely, I would recommend doing it. I think Dawn and I have both talked, and we felt like we got a lot out of it, so.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Board members, anyone else?
Oh, next. Well, the person that works in the city, so I work in the water department, so I'm all over the city all the time. I would like to thank the staff, administration. I know that through this COVID thing, it's been hard. You guys have done an excellent job. I think you've done an excellent job of being out there in the community. I see buses all the time. I know about schools and some meals. I see the kids and they're talking about school stuff or their, virtual stuff. So I just think you guys are doing a great job and just keep up the work.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Anyone else? Mr. Green? All right. If no one else, I have a couple things I wanted to go through pretty quick, but just make sure I touch on them before I forget. Kenny, I have something for you. I was approached at work about the young lady and having someone adopt the schools. I told her I would touch base with you, which I'm doing now, to remind a call back or getting her in touch with the right person, because we have resources at the bank that want to help in some form or fashion. And if we can get some help anywhere, I will take it. So if you need her information or need me to have her give you a call back, I can, or whoever she needs to contact. That's great.
Just send it to me and I'll make sure that my team will reach out.
Great. Thank you. And to follow up on some of the things I stated earlier, I know Kenny put out on his, oh goodness, mine just went blank. I know he put out a statement regarding the things that have happened recently and everything from the social unrest to COVID. I will be putting out a statement for my summer, the board president statement. What I wanted to suggest is that we as a board come together and put forth some type of commentary, something to let the public know that we are listening, we're part of understanding and moving forward. So that's something I want to put to the rest of my board members to think about, something that we can come together and do and put out, whether it be in the next newsletter or in the paper or whatever we do, just to make sure that we let people know that we're part of the solution and not part of the problem. And in same line with that, I normally don't say much about anything else as far as other school districts, but I was part of, I was able to witness something a couple weeks ago that if you get a chance to look at, Lee Summit had their first African-American board member come on board. And I will tell you, this young lady took about 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, she summed up quite a bit of information, ideals, solutions, and it was absolutely amazing. So if you get a chance to check it out, do so, because it inspired me to start looking at more things that we can do, because we're coming into a time now that is so different, because people are finally realizing and hearing a voice that hasn't been heard, that's been ignored. So things are changing across the board, not just nationally, but internationally. You see the unrest that has happened across the world. So things are changing, and we're dealing with a lot of different things. We're talking about this social and emotional unrest and health. We have to address these things. So that's what I wanted to put out there for us to think about. Like I said, I will be addressing it in my board president summer announcement, but for something for us to think about. And I think that was it for me. So if nothing else, we will move on. And I believe that is miscellaneous. Do we have any miscellaneous?
No, sir.
All right. Well, then we get down to the last part, which I'm sure we won't have to wait for this one. I'll entertain a motion.
We adjourn.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, can we get a roll call vote, please?
Amy Blankenship,
Aye.
Jeff Hornford,
Aye.
Damon Green,
Aye.
Don Kessinger,
Aye.
Mike Terry,
Aye.
Leonard Green.
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you